Hello, and welcome to Overcome, a mental health podcast, a safe place for you to share your mental health story. I'm very excited for tonight's guest. We are speaking with Amy Vince. She is an EFT tapping coach and founder of the Soar with Tapping app. Amy, welcome to the show.
I'm really happy to be here, Travis. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. I just want to turn the time right over to you and have you start off by telling us your story and how you got into EFT tapping.
Okay. Okay. I think to really understand my story, I have to kind of go way back because it involves a lot of childhood stuff, like for most people. So my dad was an alcoholic growing up, and it was right around the time I was 4 that my parents decided to get a divorce. But in order for him to get sober, he felt like he needed to move all the way across the country and be with his family in order to have the support behind him in order to get sober and stay sober. Um, as a 4-year-old girl, though, I couldn't understand that. And because children are naturally narcissistic, thinking that everything happens because of them, I kind of took that on and made it my fault that he left. Like somehow I wasn't good enough or something was wrong with me. And that was why he left. So that kind of shaped who I was in a really, really big way. And in order for me to kind of adapt and get the love I so desperately craved, because I thought there was something wrong with me, I tried to be something else than who I was, somebody other than who I was. And I became a master people pleaser, like turning myself into whoever I thought people needed me to be in a moment rather than being my authentic self. And in essence, I had no idea who I really was because of that. Because I tried so hard to please other people and to be what they needed me to be. I had no sense of who I was, which led to depressive episodes, which led to bulimia and food addiction and all kinds of anxiety attacks and just problems in general, problems with connecting with people because I was never authentic. I never had an authentic connection. But I think the one thing that I really did benefit from is that I was also a seeker. I really wanted to try and solve what I thought were problems with me. I thought that I was lazy and I thought that I was, whatever, not smart enough, not funny enough. I thought I was all of these things and I was supposed to be all of those things. But because I was a seeker, I kept trying to find the answer. In my early 30s, I was actually diagnosed with breast cancer. And that was really kind of the trigger that set me down the path because all of a sudden my seeking had kind of an intensity to it to find the answers for my life because my life was threatened. So I went into this process of really kind of digging deep on finding methods and ways and gurus and, I'm trying to find the answers to how to make my life better. And I eventually stumbled upon tapping, and for quite a while, I had kind of limited success with it because I was focusing tapping on my symptoms that I was experiencing instead of the root cause, whatever was causing the problem. And then there was a point in my life where I kind of reached a crisis point. Like I was really struggling at my job. I was struggling with being a parent and struggling in my relationship and having anxiety attacks every single day. So I turned to tapping and I started tapping like crazy. And when I say like crazy, I mean, I was probably spending a half an hour a day. That's how fast tapping works. I was spending a half an hour a day, but I was finally focusing my tapping on the root causes of all of these problems. And within a really short period of time, I'll say like 2 weeks, 2 weeks of tapping about a half an hour a day, my whole world opened up and I gained like massive clarity about why and how I had all of these traits that I thought were really ugly and my fears started disappearing and my anxiety started disappearing and my world opened up so much that that was the point when I decided that I had to become a tapping coach for other people because it didn't take long at all. And all of a sudden I was experiencing life in a whole new way. And I just really feel this passion to give this tool out to other people because it made such a huge difference for me. And I feel like it could help others as well.
I think that's so cool. That's one really cool thing about like mental health and dealing with
Mm.
like all the different aspects is you find that one thing that works for you
Yes.
and you're there. You've made it.
Yes.
Like
That's
it's
the thing. People usually go into whatever it is that has helped
mhm,
them tremendously, right?
yeah, exactly. So before you found tapping, like what methods were you using and what did you feel was missing from those methods?
Well, I had tried therapy. I had tried 12-step programs, like when I was really struggling with bulimia. I tried going to Tony Robbins. And I think for me, what felt like was missing was that, like with Tony Robbins, for example, Tony talks about really just kind of getting into a powerful state and moving forward on the things that you're struggling with and being brave, which is all a really great message and doing it all with heart. But I had such intense limiting beliefs about what I could and could not do that fears would get triggered every time I tried to take a step forward on something that was going to put me in in a place that I would have to really engage with my fear. And I didn't recognize it at the time. I just thought that there's something wrong with me. Why can't I follow through with what Tony is saying? It seems so simple, but I would get to a point where I would have to cross a threshold and go outside of my comfort zone and risk being hurt again, like I had been hurt in the past. And there was a part of me that I didn't recognize, but that was just unwilling to do those things. And it would stop me in my tracks. I would get completely paralyzed. Of course, I was blaming myself the entire time that that was happening. But it wasn't until I made the connection that these aren't like character traits that I'm struggling with. These are traumas that I'm struggling with. And my fear response is so strong that it prevented me from moving forward with those things. Like even in the 12-step program, there were things that were so strong in me. The fears were so strong that it stopped me in my tracks and I could not move forward to make my life better. And it wasn't until I was able to address those traumas and start to neutralize those fears that I was able to step outside my comfort zone and make changes in my life.
Yeah, it's really cool. And facing our fears though, like sometimes recognizing those traumas and facing those fears is just the hardest part. Like once you get over that hurdle, like it's
Yeah.
amazing how quick your mindset can change.
Yes. Yes. Once you make the connection, and it's funny how I might have read those things in books along the way, and I might have heard other people talk about it, but until I experienced it internally, I did not make that connection. But once I did, everything changed. Everything changed. And it was really such a powerful transformation.
And now the great thing is you're using what you learned to help other
Yes.
people.
Yes. Yeah. And I feel like I finally recognized the potential of this tool. I mean, the tool in itself is a really powerful tool. It's got like a triple threat of the energetic therapy, similar to acupuncture, but instead of needles, you're using the percussion of tapping. It also has the cognitive aspect of it. Just like regular talk therapy with a therapist, you are talking about what it is you want to release while you're tapping on your energy meridians. And then the third aspect is that the act of tapping on your body automatically brings your focus into the present moment because this is in the present moment. Instead of your thoughts being on the past and your fears about what happened in the past or the future and your fears about repeating those hurts or that pain, it brings your focus into the present moment. And I forgot where I was going with this. Okay, so that in itself is a really, really powerful tool. And I think where a lot of tapping practitioners go wrong is that they focus the tapping on whatever the symptom is. So they might be focusing their tapping on procrastination or addiction or having a really guarded heart and not being able to open up to a really loving relationship or something along those lines. But that, like I said, is the symptom. That is not the root cause of the problem. The root cause of the problem is much deeper, and it typically has to do with what I call foundational fears. For example, if you're suffering with procrastination, you might want to ask yourself, well, am I afraid of failure if I move forward? Am I afraid of success if I move forward? And then you find the answer to that. And then you have to ask yourself, what would happen if I failed? Like if I failed miserably and I would be really embarrassed and it would mean that I wasn't perfect. Um, would people start taking their love away from me? Would my worst fears be realized? And it would confirm the fact that I am not worthy and deserving of love, or that there really is something wrong with me. So those are the foundational fears that are underneath the symptom of procrastination. And so when I finally recognized that I needed to focus my attention there on that root cause, and there's so much potential in people focusing on that sort of thing. And that's when I kind of got the idea for the app, because what I saw that was out there, just wasn't harnessing that full potential because everybody was focusing on the symptom
And
rather than the root cause.
I think a lot of times with mental health industry in general, they do focus too much on the symptom. I think that's kind of an overall issue.
Yeah, I mean, even with like a professional coach in some way, shape, or form, they're going to tell you you need to change your mindset. You need to incorporate a bunch of tools so that in a moment you can get through. My thought process is, why not just remove all of the blocks altogether? It's like if you're driving down a freeway and you're trying to get from one location to the next, but you're in like gridlock traffic. I mean, coaches would tell you to go off this exit and take a right and a left and go around. But I'm telling you, we can remove all of the cars from the roadway so that you have a clear path to where you want to go and you'll get there faster.
It's really cool. And like during EFT tapping, what is happening in the brain and the body? Like what's happening to both of them? Like just curious.
So when we experience a traumatic event, what happens is that I'm sure you've had this conversation with your listeners before, but that your amygdala, the stress center in your brain, gets triggered. Cortisol gets released into your body, and all of a sudden you might have an increased heart rate, might be breathing a little shallower, and you don't often recognize why that is happening. It just feels like it comes out of the blue. But the truth is, our body holds the trauma in it until it has been processed and released. And so our amygdala, something is happening in our environment. 99% of the time, we're not even aware of it, but our amygdala gets triggered. And something scares us, our amygdala gets triggered, and then we go into fight or flight mode. So what happens when we start tapping is that it is sending a message energetically, cognitively to our amygdala saying it's okay to de-escalate now. You don't have to be in a heightened alert state. And so with tapping, our cortisol is lowering about 43% faster than if you did nothing. Our heart rate is going lower. Our blood pressure is going lower. So on a very physical level, you are starting to feel calmer and more relaxed. The cognitive aspect, really helps us to neutralize whatever it is that's triggering us emotionally, though, because while we're talking about whatever it is that's upsetting us, and our amygdala is de-escalating, getting rid of cortisol in our system, we're creating new neural pathways that are suggesting that it's okay to feel safe and calm about whatever it is you're scared of at this moment. And so it's kind of approaching it from a couple of different perspectives.
It's cool that it has the ability to like make you feel calm. What are like some of the common emotional or energetic blockers that people don't even realize that they're carrying? Like, you know, it's trying to think of how to make sense of my mind. Give me 1 second to rephrase it. So give me 1 second. Sorry. Let me put it this way. Someone that is emotionally blocked, what do you think are the first steps they need to take to kind of start finding themselves?
It's a really good question. First of all, I do want to explain that there are a couple of different types of trauma because I think people often misunderstand what trauma can be. Most people think of trauma as a really big event, a car accident, or a really big health scare, or an assault, sexual assault or physical assault of some kind, something big. And so that is what we call big T trauma. Everybody recognizes that those are big T traumas. So we put those over in a separate category. But there's also something called little T trauma, where people might not recognize they've actually experienced trauma at all if it fits into this little T trauma category. And this would be like having an angry parent. So you get really nervous when they're going to come home from work, or an angry sibling or something like that. So you spend your childhood days kind of walking on eggshells and trying to make sure that you don't do anything wrong so that there isn't, some kind of an explosion. It could be being ignored. Like I mentioned, kids are naturally narcissistic, and if they're ignored, they often assume that it's their own fault. And you never know what kind of stories they will make up in their head about why that is. And I'm trying to think of another situation. They could have a physical issue when they're a little kid, and that can create a really big distrust of our body. And that is, if this is the vessel that we live in, and there is a huge element of distrust because we're afraid that the rug is going to be pulled out from underneath us at any moment in our body, that's another really big trauma. And so we often don't recognize that there's these little T traumas. And so people make the assumption that I haven't had any trauma. I don't know why I'm struggling with all of these things. I wasn't beat as a little kid. I wasn't abused in any way, shape, or form. Why am I like this? And it's because of those little T traumas. And so what I just want people to understand is that most of their unwanted behavior is because of some form of trauma. And if they don't have that big T trauma, then it is really helpful to be willing to look at the little T trauma. And I want to take away the stigma that saying that you have had trauma is somehow a weakness. If it wasn't some kind of massive abuse. I mean, people often say, well, I don't have anything to complain about. My parents were really loving. They weren't around a lot, or, maybe my siblings were really mean to me as a little kid. But other than that, it's not that big of a deal. But the truth is, those little T traumas often have a bigger effect on us because they go unrecognized, because they happen over a long period of time, typically. And we create such intense limiting beliefs about that type of behavior that follows us through our entire life. It threads its way into every single decision that we make. And those are often harder to dislodge than if you had had some massive event in your life, because those happen once. The emotional connection to those things is actually quite small in comparison to decades of behavior and limiting beliefs as a result.
I was one of those people until I went to therapy that believed that there was only big T trauma. I
Yeah.
would never think about these little things.
Yeah.
Then he's like, no, you need to think outside of the box for a minute. Like this little teeny thing in your life, like, it's trauma. It's still categorized as trauma.
Yes. And
And
it's
just
often
it
so much
builds
more
up over time.
complex.
Yeah.
Yes. So much more complex, specifically because it goes unrecognized like that.
And then once I realized that, like, I was able to remove some roadblocks that I was hitting into. So like I'm glad that you brought that up.
So you asked about, how can people really get started on understanding this? It's having that kind of a knowledge and awareness of what trauma is. Then what I recommend all of my clients and everybody do is to, using that information, figure out what are your top 10 fears. And I don't just mean little things like fear of spiders or, fear of something. What I mean is big foundational fears. Like, is there a fear that there's something wrong with you? Is there a fear that you're not worthy or deserving of love? Or a fear of your body, or a fear of financial insecurity? That's another that can also be a trauma. Fear of not belonging, like if you experienced a lot of bullying growing up, that can be another fear that develops. Those foundational fears, working on those, especially with tapping, is going to have the biggest impact on your life, no matter what, because those are usually at the heart of every single issue. So writing down your top 10 fears and then going after those with tapping is going to yield the best results.
It's awesome. Anything that's like, I just love hearing this stuff. I've learned so much and I just eat it up.
I understand. I'm the same way.
So I get like a little, I don't even know the word I'm looking for. Excited, like over giddy. I think giddy is that the word I'm looking for?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
What role do emotions and energy play like in our overall health, and how does EFT tapping work to balance those out?
I think we are multifaceted beings. We're physical, we're emotional, we're spiritual, we're intellectual, we're all of those things. And I think that emotions, for the most part, have typically taken a backseat for everybody. Culturally, we haven't really been encouraged to engage with our emotions, especially if they are the challenging emotions. So we don't have an education about how to really feel, how to lean into feelings. But the feelings happen no matter if we lean into them or not. If we don't lean into them, they actually get lodged in our bodies. And over time, they can create physical problems as well. I mean, we've already been talking about some of the emotional problems that it can create, but physical problems can result. I mean, 95% of doctors agree that most diseases are caused by stress. And stress is just another way of saying that there are underlying fears that have not been neutralized or resolved. So emotions play such a huge part. But like I said, we haven't been encouraged to engage with our emotions. I mean, men are only encouraged to engage with anger, and everything else can be viewed as a weakness. And with women, if they are overly emotional, they can be accused of being hysterical. All kinds of derogatory comments could be made about if you're on your period or, something along those lines. So we're not really encouraged to lean into this, but it is a huge aspect of who we are as people. So I think that's why tapping is so powerful, because all of these emotions have been stored in our bodies for so long that when they start to be honored and acknowledged through tapping, they can be released so quickly and open open up our energetic pathways and open up our ability to just connect with people and be more of who we really are without having all of these traumas kind of weighing us down and creating just a bubble of fear around us at all times. So I think from my perspective, I think that the emotional aspect is kind of the next frontier. I mean, you and I have both seen how quickly the mental health sphere is being more acknowledged and honored today. And once we recognize that really leaning into those emotions and honoring them is the key to letting them go, that's going to be like a whole new understanding for people. And I think that tapping is a really great method to do that in a safe way and to do that in a really fast way too. You don't have to be mired down in grief or fear for a significant length of time. Like I said, half an hour a day, and my life was totally changed in 2 weeks. So, no, it doesn't take years of therapy. It just takes leaning in.
Yeah. And I'm going to go back to something you said. I love that you actually look for the trauma that is being caused, not just the symptom.
Hmm.
That's huge.
Yeah.
But really, I'm a big believer with like when it comes to any type of therapy, uh, or whatever you're doing to better your mental state, it's basically just creating a habit out of it,
Yes. Yes, definitely.
continually doing it like over and over.
Yeah. I think being determined to find an answer for yourself is the best asset that you have on your healing journey. That determination is going to mean the difference between you finding the answer eventually or not. Just keep trying something else. If one thing doesn't work, try something new. And I'm a huge proponent of a comprehensive approach to healing in all ways. So I think that like, if somebody is depressed, tapping is only one tool that they can use towards healing that part of themselves. I think nutrition also plays a huge part in our emotions and our hormones and our ability to get out of a really deep, dark place. Exercise is a really great way. So, comprehensive approach to healing is something I recommend to everybody. Tapping is one portion of it because we are multifaceted beings, but it is something that has been so ignored for so long that I think that this is going to be kind of an exploding industry when people recognize its full potential.
You've said you've been doing this for or EFT tapping for 16 years. How has your approach and along with like EFT tapping itself evolved over the last decade or so?
Yeah, it has evolved. Well, it was started by a psychotherapist who happened to be kind of dabbling in acupuncture and acupressure points while he was working with a client on, I think she had a phobia of water. So he happened to, during a session with her, he said, "Why don't you tap on your stomach meridian?" Because she was experiencing that fear in her belly when she was thinking about water. And talk about that fear while you're tapping on that point. And she experienced one of those 1-minute miracles where all of a sudden she was not afraid of water anymore after a lifetime phobia of it. So from there, he created a really kind of complicated process of tapping on certain points on your body. It was called thought field therapy, TFT. And then it was engineered a little bit further by Gary Craig to include very specific points and just to continually go around those points while you're focusing on whatever it is you want to release. And since then, it has gotten a little bit lighter in that there's not so many points that you tap on, but I don't think that it has affected how effective it is. When I'm tapping, I like to tap on all 14 energy meridians. We have two sets of energy meridians on either side of our body, and I like to tap on both sides of my body just because I'm here. I might as well get the most bang for my buck. So all the energy meridians on both sides of my body, but I don't know that it's any more effective than just tapping on a few of the spots, which a lot of very successful practitioners use. So I don't know that there is a wrong way to do tapping anymore. I think that's what we're realizing. There is no wrong way to do it. You cannot do yourself any harm by tapping on your body and talking about some of the challenging emotions. And in fact, you can actually increase your happiness levels quite a bit if you just focused on positive stuff. It's not going to, it's like putting a band aid over something if you're just doing that as opposed to focusing on the root cause. But my own personal journey, like I mentioned, is that once I recognized how powerful it is to work on that root cause, that's all I go for now. If I get a new client, the immediate thing we're working on is the trauma itself. Um, and then we work on living fears and beliefs that were a result of that trauma. And sometimes trauma takes a long time to work through. If people are really afraid to engage with their trauma, sometimes we start with it in a vault, like across the city. It's inside a vault. Nobody has a combination but my client. And we will tap their fear intensity down from, say it's a 9 or a 10, we'll tap it down to a 0. And then we move the vault a little bit closer. And then we move it a little closer. And then maybe we open the door. We're still not engaging with it, but we're being very gentle and very sensitive so that it's not something that's re-traumatizing.
That's cool because you're basically just taking the baby steps to get them to open up.
Yeah, baby steps, but that's where we start. We always start with the trauma. Once the trauma itself is neutralized, then we just start moving forward from there. But that's where I always start now. There's a lot of my clients that will come to me with the problem of the day, and I'll have to kind of bring them back and say, what's underneath that? And what's underneath that? And what's underneath that? And then we'll get to the heart of the issue. And then we'll have some real success with not only neutralizing what happened that day, but neutralizing the fear beneath it.
As with like everything else, mental health, I'm sure you get people that are skeptical. What do you say to those people that are like, I'm not so sure about this?
Well, I've had quite a few clients that have been recommendations from other people that I know believe in it, but it has to be something that people connect with, to be honest. People don't often put a lot of value in experiencing their emotions, not only because they never have, but it's not encouraged. It often gets judged and criticized out in our world today. So if they're not interested in kind of leaning into whatever their inner child kind of experienced, I can't convince them otherwise. Maybe it's not the right time for them, and maybe this isn't the right method for them. And I absolutely honor that. They will find their way one way or another. And, but I encourage everybody to lean into it. It's not for everyone.
As I think we mentioned it kind of at the beginning. It's like there's so many different methods to use to.
Absolutely. Absolutely. For some people, will swear by hypnosis. EMDR is another good option. EMDR is great because there's a therapist leading you through it. There's a lot of cost associated with that, though. So if cost is a limiting factor, then I just encourage somebody to download the app. I mean, that is just such a small fraction of what it would cost to work with a professional coach or therapist, and you can still realize some really great healing as a result. That's mostly the message that I want to get across. It doesn't hurt to try it. It doesn't hurt to lean in, give it a shot. And if you experience even the smallest bit of progress, then I think that's worth it.
Yeah, I totally agree. I'm right there with you. It can make you feel even that one little bit calmer or help you overcome some depressive mode that you're in. Like it's
Yeah.
worth it.
And you can have it at your fingertips at any point in your day. You can stop your car and start tapping on the side of the road. I often tap when I'm walking on the treadmill. I mean, you can tap at night when you're lying in bed. You don't have to say things out loud. You can do it anytime, anywhere. It's tremendously helpful for people being able to get a good night's sleep because it lowers that cortisol level and it really gets you out of that triggered state, especially for people that suffer with insomnia. It's really, really difficult. It's just easy to have it in your phone, you know?
And I actually spoke to somebody not too long ago that now that you mentioned it, that's exactly what he explained. He just didn't call it tapping, as he does it before bed,
Oh, yeah.
like when
Yeah.
he's laying down. And I was like, I know it's called something, but it wasn't ringing a bell at that moment. But when you said that, I'm like, that's what he's doing.
Yes. Yes.
I want to ask you, this is kind of a generalized question. I like to ask pretty much everybody that I have on just to get the different answers. What do you think the biggest stigma is when it comes to mental health?
I think it's that there is something wrong with challenging emotions, that we're not supposed to feel sad, that we're not supposed to feel fear or grief or anything along those lines. I think we've been fed a message that we're supposed to think positive thoughts all the time. And I do think that there is kind of an emotional um, muscle that has to be created with thinking positive thoughts. But I think that that also comes after dealing with all of the fears that we do experience. I mean, I've been tapping for, like I said, 16, 17 years now. I still experience fear, but I also have the emotional acuity now to move through it and be able to get to the positive thoughts more easily. I think it's really challenging for people to get to that place if they still are dealing with a lot of trauma. So, what I want people to know is just that there's nothing wrong with them. There's nothing wrong with them. They are the product of their environment growing up, and they might not recognize it, but they probably have some trauma in there somewhere that is affecting their ability to lead that happy life.
How you said that we're taught this certain way, and it's not true. Like,
It's not true.
yeah,
It's not. We are emotional beings. Emotions happen all the time. And it's okay. It's okay to be mad. It's okay to feel vulnerable. All of those things make us whole.
my therapist has told me many times, like, in no way am I going to take anxiety or depression away from you. You're still going to experience this stuff. You're just now going to have the tools to overcome the those feelings quicker.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Move through them, lean into them, and even ask yourself, is this still a credible threat? I recognize it was a credible threat when I was a little kid, maybe, but maybe it's not. Maybe it doesn't apply in my life today.
Exactly.
Excuse me.
If you could leave our audience with one message about healing, what would it be?
Again, it's just be determined. Be determined. Don't, if you're not happy, if you're feeling depressed, if you're struggling with an addiction, be determined in finding the right answer for you. You will find it. You will find that right answer. And it might be a number of things that gets you to the place where you're feeling like you're healing. But just stay determined and don't give up on yourself because everybody's worth it. They're all worth it.
I like the feeling like you're healing. And where can people find you?
They can find me, Soar with Tapping on all of the social media stuff. They go to my website, soarwithtapping.com. They can go to /podcast dash special, and they can find a code there where they can put it into the app and get 50% off of their first annual subscription. So I encourage people to go download it. You get 14 days free no matter what. Try it out and see if it's for you.
And one last thing, is there anything that we did not discuss that you would like to bring up?
I do want to kind of give people the heads up with tapping that what we focus on a lot in a tapping script is the really hard or challenging feelings. And a lot of people don't understand, and it feels counterintuitive that we're focusing on negative things in order to feel better in the end. But the truth is, like I mentioned earlier, we store up all of those emotions. Those emotions, unresolved emotions and fears, are living in our body. They are still there. So while we might strong arm our way to a positive feeling, we're not getting rid of any of the baggage that has created our current experience. And so it takes leaning in to those negative emotions. It is not toxic to do so. I promise you that. And in the end, you will feel better as a result. It's just often a misunderstanding about what it takes to feel good. And sometimes what it takes to feel good is to lean into the hard stuff.
Exactly. I think that's how I finally figured it out is like when I started going to the intense therapy, it was like, okay, well, if I am going to do this, I need to fully commit or else I'm going to get nowhere.
Yeah. Yeah, it takes really opening yourself up to that to realize the potential.
Amy,
Yeah.
thank you so much for coming on. I admire what you're doing and I love how you're helping people heal.
Well, thank you, Travis. I really enjoyed our conversation today.
Thanks to all the listeners. Thanks for joining us. Please follow us on Instagram at Overcome Pod and find us on YouTube and all the major podcast platforms. I always get tongue tied over this stuff. The best thing you can do right now is share our podcast, follow us, like our stuff, everything done with that. Thanks again for listening. Until next time.